Well, look at the PS then, and from PS we look at an exam question that's typically this topic. So let's start with asking something like the same at then it's in the market. We start with, we're still in chapter 1.5, the supply side of macro, and we look at the price setting curve. So the price setting, then it's from the firm's marketing department and the product market, we get the price setting PS curve. And it is a relationship showing the real wage that results when firms maximize profits by setting price as a constant markup on costs. So, and the markup, it explains also how strong the competition, how strong is it. So let's, and the problem, how to get the right price when market power, considering costs and productivity. So it's market power, it is costs, and it is productivity. And before we shift it, let's then look at the employment and real wage. And what we do, we say the price that gives us a real wage, it's like this, and it's a curve, it's a PS, it's a horizontal curve. So what do we understand when it's a horizontal curve? We understand that the wage coming from the price band, getting the real wage, it has nothing to do with employment. So if employment is high or it is low, well, it's the same price. So the price set by the marketing and in the product market, it's the same. So we set it up if employment is high or low. But then it's about shifting it. So if you shift the PS curve, what could be reasons? Take a minute. What could be reasons? Okay, so we shift then the PS curve up, but what do we understand? Then it is because price is down. It is because price is down, so we need to look for reasons why they set down the price. Because if price goes down, then the real wage goes up. And that is what we measure here. So what could be reasons? Well, we can look at the market power it goes down. So if it's more competition, so it could be market power down, more competition. What about costs? What could be reasons for price down? What about cost? Well, if costs goes down, so lower cost, lower costs. So it could be lower costs on wages. It could be on then raw material, things like this. And finally, it's also something to do with productivity. So could also be higher productivity. But there's a point to make. There's a difference between the two first ones and the third one. Why? Why is it different? What do we have to add then if we say that the reason for this change is because higher productivity? What is the difference? It is the profit curve. The other curve further up, you have to shift it up also. So if it's then the point here, number 3, then we not only shift, we got a curve here, that's the profit, total profit. So then we shift the total profit curve also together with then the PS curve. That is if the topic it is higher productivity. So this is the PS curve, and then we add it together when we look at the model as a total, and when we look at it, we always start by looking at what's on the axis. It is employment, it is unemployment, and it is real wage. But it's not only real wage here, because real wage, that is this one, this is the real wage, but it's also what I call total profit. It's also output per worker. So output per worker, that's what we got here. So at the vertical axis, we both measure real wage, but we also measure output per worker. So then we got a point here, and we call it Nash equilibrium. Like concepts like this, you always need, for instance, a sentence to explain it, and you can do, what happened here? You can do by saying that this solution, there is one real wage that is, when we talk about the HR department, they agree on the wage. They say this is the right wage for this many employed people, and also when we add the labor force, then we get the unemployment. And Nash equilibrium, no one regrets. So it's both the HR department and also the marketing department that they don't regret. So they all agree on this one. What we also we started talking about that this is the equilibrium, but it's also an equilibrium in the long run. So in the short run, you can have business cycles, so the actual employment could be higher or lower than this. But in the long run, there's reasons why we get to point, or there are forces that goes in the direction of point A. And also, when we look at in the short run, the employment could be different from this. And there's a point to make here, because we can look at if this is the employment, we can add SSE. And SSE, it stands for supply side equilibrium. So the level here of employment, it's called the supply side equilibrium level. But it's also same as if you look at GDP. So we can also say that at this point here, then both we call it supply side equilibrium, but it's also a level of GDP, that's the SSE. And finally, we can, if we use U for unemployment, we can look at unemployment SSE. So when the economy, when it's in point A, then both the unemployment and the employment and also GDP, it's at this supply side equilibrium. So if we are to the left of this, then the unemployment is more than the long run equilibrium. So back to the example for Norway, the actual unemployment level could be different from the long run one. But the long run equilibriums, the structural, that's also a topic to use. Structural unemployment. That is typically 2-3% in Norway. Like talking about Sweden, it's maybe not 8%, but it's typically a higher long-run equilibrium point for Sweden, because for many years they had more unemployment than we had. So it's not the same number in different countries, but it's something you could compare with. You can say that the long run, the typical unemployment level in Norway is 2-3%. Where are we compared to this? If, like some years ago, we had 5% actual unemployment, then we had both the structural, but we had also more of, because of the business cycle, more of a short run reason. So this is something you need to think about, that you find it also in if you look into examples, you find that they use GDP supply side equilibrium like this. Let's look at typical exercise for this topic here. So let's look at an example. This is from the part 2 last year exam. It says there are 3 questions that you should answer briefly. There's a limit, 200 words per question, but you can answer them well without using up the entire word limit. You can see at all times how many words you have written, and you cannot make a mistake by writing too many words, as it is not technically possible. So the first question here, it goes, it says, in this one, the figure, let's make it a bit bigger. So this one, the figure below depicts the wage setting and price setting curve. Assume that the economy is initially in equilibrium A, and digitalization and e-commerce platforms have increased intensity of competition in the country, making markets more competitive. What effect will it have in the model? So, take a few minutes to think it over. How do you explain, how do you answer this one? the first thing you need to do is then to understand which curve. You need to understand, is it the PS or WS curve? And in this example, it's the PS curve. And we shift the PS curve up like this. And why is that? Because price down, with more competition, then they will increase or lower the price in the way that we explain it by shifting the PS curve up. And then we get new point A up here. So we can see from the diagram that employment will be higher and unemployment will go down. And what do we need to do then? What we need to do? We need to explain how we get from A to the new A. And we do so by looking at the difference. Now there's a difference here. There's a difference if we look at it from the HR department and compare it with what happens here in the marketing department. So we look at it from 2 points of view. So first, what can we say about this point? Let me put it here. So the HR department. What is the concern from the HR department? Well, they need, or where do we start? We say that if price goes down, what happens to demand? What happens to demand then if price goes down? Demand goes up. So price down, demand goes up. So then they need more workers. They need more workers. And how do they get more workers? What does the HR department, what do they have to do? They have to pay a higher wage. They have to pay a higher wage. So what do they have to do? HR pay a higher wage. So this is the thing following. We follow them. We follow the WS curve. We follow WS curve. But if we then goes to the PS, we go to the marketing. So marketing, what happens here? Higher wage. What would they say? What would the marketing department say? Higher wage. Higher wage. That is higher costs. Higher wage, higher costs. So they will increase then the price. They will increase the price. So what we get we get a spiral of both higher nominal wages and higher prices. Where do we end? We end in the new equilibrium called nu A. We end in the new equilibrium, and in the new equilibrium, that is point nu A, then the real wage is constant. So in point nu A, in this point nu A, then the real wage is constant. So what then? What do we understand? Then the nominal wage increase equals the price increase. So if the real wage is constant, then the change, the increase in the nominal wage, must be equal to the change in the prices. So that is point nu A, and that's also how we explain the move from A to the nu A. Could we add should you try to explain it to a neighbor and then add the question, is it more information we can get out of it? More information, but try to this one, try to explain it to yourself or to a neighbor, but also more out of it. What more? What else? Okay, so we explain the move. We explain the move from A to nu A by looking at HR and compare it with the marketing department. And when we are in the nu A, we can see that the labor productivity didn't change. So what do we understand then? The total profit didn't change. So the portion that goes to workers is higher. So now the income distribution is better, because now the workers, they get a bigger share of the cake. That's one point to make. What else? What about what we have here? The long run equilibrium. We find that employment in the long run is higher. Unemployment in the long run is lower. So the structural unemployment is in the long run is lower. So if you get more competition in a market, what happens then, according to the model? It happens like this, that income distribution is better, the real wage is higher and the structural unemployment is lower. So this is something that comes from the model. First of all, it's important that you understand it and try to then let's just add these things here. So the total profit did not change. Total profit did not change. Total profit, that is what's called labor productivity. Then we know that the Gini, what happened to the Gini? It went down, explaining that there's less inequality. So the total profit did not change, then the portion to workers increased. And finally, the long run point nu A. The long run point nu A, it is higher employment. It is lower unemployment and higher real wage. So all from what was the question? It was more competition in the market. What do we get? We get both higher employment, lower unemployment, and we get a higher real wage. So this is one example how you can use the model. We will have more examples, and the first one, it comes here. So what I've asked here, I asked a question for you then. What is happening here? Explain the change. Okay, so the left side of or the model, the left side, we just talked about. So here we find an example, also with numbers. So we find that employment, it goes from 80 to 83 out of labor force who's 90. And we see that the PS curve, it starts at 60%, and then it goes to 79%. And the total is the same, the total doesn't change. So then the income distribution will be different then. So this is something we talked about enough now, but then let's focus on this one. So first we see that the slope of the curve here is flat until 10, and then it goes here to 60, and then it changes again up here. So the slope is first is horizontal, then this is the slope here, and finally it's even steeper. So what we understand by the slope, how can you explain this thing about cumulative share? Take a minute. How do you explain the slope here? Okay, so when the slope is like this, it explains no income. So the slope, it explains the income. So the steeper the curve, the higher the income. And cumulative means we add number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. No? And for the 10 first here, they are, in the beginning, they are all unemployed. So it goes up to 10. They have no income. What happens then for those between 10 and 90? That's the workers. They have an income. So we add number 11, 12. We add, and we get 60% of the total when we get to 90. And then the 10 owners, they get the rest, so they get an even bigger share. So they get, we add number 91, 2, 3, so on, we get to 100. So then we get the Gini coefficient, 0.36. What happens then? Well, when the workers get a higher wage, then the slope, it doesn't start at 10, it starts here, now it's only 7. It's only 7 unemployed. So now it starts at 7. It starts here at 7. And the slope is steeper. The blue one up here is steeper, explaining that now they get a bigger share. So we add from number 8, 9, 10 up to 90, and then we get a share of 79. And because they have a higher share, then the Gini coefficient is lower. Meaning, when it's going down, it could be 1, it's going down, the closer it gets to 0, the more equal they are. So there's less differences between the owners and the employed. Last, before the break, tell your neighbor, what did you learn from this one? What is the most important here? What is it?
First example. Okay, it's our last break. So I'll be sitting down here if you have any questions. So when we take 15 minutes then break before the last hour then.